Democrats are set to raise $28 million tonight at a fundraising event in Hollywood, which is the single most amount of money raised in a campaign event in Democratic Party history. I want to talk about campaign financing for a second, raising funds and that, because it's incredibly important. I know that a lot of people tend to think that it's not. They think, well, you can rely on free press, which is true, but you're looking for targeted ad campaigns. You're looking for targeting canvassing operations and trying to get and convince 1% to 4% of the vote to show up. If one side is doing this and one side is not, that does not mean the side that isn't will lose. It just means that the side that is has an advantage, a significant advantage, especially in a close race. And the thing for Donald Trump and the Republicans is if Joe Biden raises the same amount of money as Donald Trump, if they raise the same amount of money, Joe Biden is favored to win most of the time. And that's because so many of these swing states lean blue. So it's not as much trying to target states that you otherwise wouldn't go to. It's simply trying to get your voters out. I don't think Donald Trump understands this to a real degree. I'm mostly convinced that 2016 was dumb luck, that nobody in their party knew what was going on. They saw some polling that was favorable for them because they were looking for favorable polling, and so they went to the Midwest and they got support. Not a lot, tens of thousands of voters in 3 states won the election. But fundraising is going to be incredibly important, and I don't think that the Republicans are in a good spot, in large part because Donald Trump stripped the RNC, put his daughter-in-law in place. I think very clearly, we'll see if I'm wrong, but I think very clearly because he's going to try and use that money. He's going to try and use that money to pay off his fees because he already has. The first half of 2023, he spent about $45 million on paying off his legal fees, about 22 to 24 for raising money, and about 15% or 15 million on the campaign, which is like a tiny, tiny amount. He has $600 million coming due. That $600 million is going to be ruled on probably in the fall. I don't know when his creditors will call in the debt, but that's a lot of money. Even if they don't call, and even if he pays it off on a long-term loan program or something like that, that's a lot of money for him to handle, and he's got a piggy bank. And I think that he's egotistical enough. The polls are convincing him that this is a sure thing. I don't think he's going to put money into the campaign, which is going to give Biden an incredible advantage. We'll see. They just haven't done it to that degree. The Democrats are going to continue to raise a lot of money, and there's a lot of questions with the Republicans, right? Because we're seeing something different than the people financing these elections, right? We're seeing something vastly different. Right now, they're playing the game of who do we think's likely to win? Because we want their favor. We don't want to go against it. Who do we think's likely to win? Or who's beneficial towards us is the other question, right? But if we're not sure who's beneficial towards us, who's going to likely to win so we can buy their favor? Donald Trump is talking about Hannibal Lecter and just crazy, bizarro stuff straight out of Crazy Town. And I mean, there was actually a CNBC meeting the other day where the CEOs were just they came out people were shaking their heads. They were just confused. He talked about Hannibal Lecter. But we're seeing something completely different on our side. Like when we see inflation, when we see things that are happening at the grocery store, it affects us. It does not affect these CEOs, right? It only affects them in the fact that they will have higher operating costs for their businesses, which they will just pass on to consumers anyways. They're not feeling the struggle of groceries going up or gas going up or payments going up or interest rates going up, unless it's in reference to some crazy expensive thing that they're buying. They just don't feel it. And so they're looking at it from the perspective of who is going to keep my business safe throughout what could potentially be a major recession. And the American economy, despite the inflation, despite the cost of goods going up, is doing very, very, very well on the international market. And I think that these CEOs are looking at this from that perspective. Like, do we really want to take a chance? Our stocks are up. We're making record profits. Do we want to take a chance that we make that switch? And right now, it seems like no. There's a couple of high-profile people that Republicans have pointed to be like, oh, CEOs are changing sides. I don't think that's the case. And we're seeing it now with $28 million raised. We see it with Joe Biden, and the Democrats have raised an incredible amount of money. I expect them to raise even more. And I think that there's a lot of fear in the corporate world of a potential Donald Trump presidency. in large part, and this is only a question because we went through a major pandemic and we have, issues in regards to the economy. If it wasn't, it would be a pretty clear choice. We know who would be winning right now in the polls wholeheartedly would be Biden. But because we went through that, there's a question that needs to be made. Is Donald Trump, did he just inherit a good economy, which he did, or is Joe Biden tanking the economy and we should be concerned? And I think right now, with the world going through what it is, very clearly it's Joe Biden is the better option for the economy. And that's going to spark funding. 100% that's going to spark funding. I think there's going to be a ton of money that comes in from that. And all of the policy positions that the Republicans have that are just terrible. If the Democrats spread their money out across the country, and are able to raise more, and Donald Trump's not spending anything, which currently he's really not, I think he loses. He does not able to mobilize voters. He loses. They're already going around telling everyone that he's winning in the polls, telling everyone that he's winning, which right now, not a big deal, right? If the polls turn around, well, then all of these Republicans are sitting around going, he's winning in the polls, ignoring that the polls they're currently changing, not to a significant degree yet, but they are changing in Biden's favor. And they're looking around going, okay, we've already won it. It's the same thing as 2016. We've already won it. Don't show up, which I'm fine with. So even if Trump were to change his tune on that, which I don't think he's going to because he's egotistical about it, because he doesn't want to look like a loser, I think Republican voters are going to hold on to that. Like, why don't you show up? It's a done deal. We saw something very similar in 2020 in the primaries with Bernie. There's a lot of people, even myself, I was like, I'm going to vote for him in my state, but he's probably going to win anyways. So I don't really, you know what I mean? I don't really feel the need and all that to be super over enthusiastic about it because he's pretty much got it in my state and he lost in my state. So it's important to keep that into perspective that the demotivation of the Republican base is very, very high. Despite all of the memes and viral videos that the Republicans put out that are very effective, that doesn't get people to vote. That doesn't get people to show up. I think that there are serious campaign issues with the Republican Party and them raising money, and I think we're going to see that here shortly when it ramps up because they're already way behind in fundraising. They're way behind. And sure, they may have gotten $55 million, which is alleged. We don't know yet. They may have gotten $55 million. Is that going to be enough just to turn the tides of fundraising? No. Joe Biden's raking in $28 million in a single day. I think that with the lack of cohesion on the top, the very bad leadership of Mike Johnson, Republicans are in serious trouble when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to figuring out what elections where across the United States to finance. And I think there's also a degree that's important here. There's going to be a degree of delusion when it comes to the polls. And like there was in 2016. They're looking at the favorable ones to try and give themselves an advantage in states that they could possibly win or think they could win. And it may just be setting them up for this fake reality that they're living in, which is something we saw similar in 2016 when they identified internally, polling data, well, because they had help from Russians, which is a different thing, but that the Midwest states could potentially flip for them. And so they went after them. That was a guess, but it also had to do with Hillary not showing up in those states. And this is a very similar instance. Donald Trump thinks, I'm ahead in the polls. I know I need to go campaign, but for the most part, people just aren't paying attention. And in this instance, they already think he won. They think he's going to win, despite the fact they've lost 7 elections in a row. Look out for fundraising. I'm going to pay attention to it. It's going to be a big part of this, and I will keep you guys updated.